My father died of a stroke approximately a year ago, and I only recently learned about my half-brother through her will. My father died when I was in high school, so everything my father owned was to be shared among 3 people, my uncle, brother, and me. In fact, I had no idea this person existed until about 3 weeks ago, when my lawyer brought it up with us. But he was my age, and my father had been financially supporting him since he was born. For the rest of this piece, I'll refer to him as Alex. So, I'm 29 years old, and he's around 27. After a lengthy conversation with my father's lawyer, I learned that she had an affair with a neighbor for a few years and had tried to quit it. But then she became pregnant and wanted to keep the baby. So she decided to stand up and support him as the baby's mother. She paid child support and would meet with him on alternate holiday. We don't know if my father was aware of it. But it doesn't matter, because after so many years, I discovered that my father had a lot of skeletons in her closet, even though she is no longer with me, and I should probably forgive her because she was always there for me despite what I now know. It feels as if I never knew her. To be honest, I was disappointed. I know I should let it go, but it's just so difficult to accept. Anyway, when my father's lawyer asked whether I wanted to contact Alex, I said I'd think about it and get back to him. I understand it's not his fault, but I didn't want to see him. It's too soon and everything is still too new, so I didn't want to appear callous. So I said I'd think about it. But in truth, I had decided that I didn't want to have any form of relationship with this individual, at least not right now. My uncle, on the other hand, believed that I should give it a go and experience how it felt to have a sibling. Even though he's not my complete brother, he's my half-brother, and I'm not interested in getting to know him. But I didn't say anything to my uncle because he had already promised to see Alex. And I could tell he wanted to build a relationship with this man. That was a couple of weeks ago, almost 7 weeks ago. And only 2 weeks ago, I was surprised to learn that Alex had moved in next door, and we would now be neighbours. I learned about this on a Friday. I was having a lazy morning when my doorbell rang. It was weird because I don't typically receive guests this early in the morning, but when I opened the door, I discovered Alex standing there. Obviously, when I found out about him, I stalked him on social media and knew how he looked, but I didn't anticipate him to be standing outside my door. When I saw him, I literally had nothing to say since I was in disbelief, but he appeared extremely delighted to see me and told me that he had come all the way from Chicago, where he had been living for the past few years, to meet me, and had even rented the house next door because he wanted to be close by. He introduced himself and explained that he and his girlfriend owned a marketing agency for online entrepreneurs and had a lot of money. Then I understood how he could afford to fly down here and rent a house just to bond with. After having some small chat, he decided to face the elephant in the room, stating that while I had never heard of him, he had always known I existed and had learned a lot about me from our mother, but had not reached out since our mother had warned him I wouldn't be prepared. And she was correct. I still wasn't. It still felt strange to approach her as our mother, but I was already uncomfortable around him because I hadn't expected him. And on top of that, he seemed so happy to see me that I felt horrible for not wanting him around. Furthermore, he had travelled all the way from Chicago and rented a property near me when he could still be living with his girlfriend in their lovely home, which I had seen on social media. So he was doing all of this for me, but I didn't want to be around him, which made me feel horrible. So I decided to give it a chance and be friendly to him. He told me that after I told our mother's lawyer that I needed time to consider whether I wanted to be in a relationship with him or not, he refused to give him my address. But he'd been chatting with our uncle, who had supposedly recommended the whole thing and had given him my contact information and address so he could surprise me and we could bond with each other. I was upset that my uncle had done that, since he knew I was still thinking about these things. I hadn't made a decision yet. Therefore, he had no right to simply give out my address like that. But after spending the morning chatting with Alec, I decided to give our relationship a chance, since, obviously, if he was making such an effort to connect with me, he couldn't be such a nasty person. When we met for the first time last week, I thought he was nice and sweet, and I figured we could get to know each other over the next few months, because he had mentioned that he was tired of living in Chicago, and their business was almost running itself, and everyone worked from home anyway, so he could just move down here to be closer to his family, as well as myself and our uncle. I was first terrified by the prospect of having to live with him as a neighbour, but after seeing how wonderful he was to me, I began to feel guilty about it almost immediately, so I told him it would be a great idea. I honestly thought that an early morning visit was only a one-time event that day, because he had just arrived the night before and couldn't wait to see me. I assumed that when he stated that he wanted to create a connection with me, he meant that we could do it at our own pace. But something strange started happening. He started showing up at my place every other day. Every morning, he would arrive with something for breakfast, and I would be compelled to eat with him, despite the fact that I'm not a morning person and prefer to have my morning coffee alone, so that I don't have to talk to anyone and can just be with my thoughts for a bit. But he'd show up with muffins or croissants and coffee for me every morning, and then he'd start talking, and I'd leave for work to avoid him. For the first few days, I attempted to put up with it because I assumed he was just being nice. But after about 6 days, he began showing up at my house after I returned home from work. That was a big problem for me because I'm a surgeon and everyone knows how demanding my job is. So when I get home, I'll definitely need my time and space. I can't just stroll in and start entertaining the people. But as soon as I arrived home, he'd be at my door in nearly 20 minutes, forcing me to let him inside and spend time with him. It was becoming quite taxing for me, and I knew he was only trying to be polite and create a relationship with me, but he couldn't force a healthy relationship. If he wanted to get along with me, he needed to respect my boundaries and give me space. 3 days ago, I returned home from an unusually exhausting day at work, and all I wanted to do was curl up with a nice book and a glass of wine before falling asleep. Unfortunately, Alex appeared at my door once more, just as I had returned home and freshened myself. I was already angry at his behavior and decided I couldn't take any more of it. So I opened the door and, instead of inviting him inside like I usually do, told him I needed him to back off a little bit. My tone may have been hard, but I was trying to be as courteous and civilized as possible because I was exhausted and didn't want to talk to anyone. Anyway, I told him directly that I needed my space and time to get along with him. We couldn't start being all brotherly in just 3 weeks. It wasn't enough. He had known I existed his entire life, but I only learned about him a few months ago, and it was not the same for me. So I needed him to respect my boundaries. I informed him that he was still welcome to stay out at my house on weekends, but on weekdays, when I got home from work, I simply didn't have the energy to cope with anything and wanted to relax. I told him I hoped he understood where I was coming from, and he said he respected it, so I closed the door when he left. Throughout the discussion, he maintained a poker face so I couldn't tell what he was thinking, but I knew I had attempted to be as kind and nice as possible, so I didn't feel bad about anything I said. However, the next day, I received a phone call from my uncle who expressed his disappointment in me for the way I had handled Alec. He explained that the poor guy was just trying to be nice to me and make up for lost time, which is why he was so insistent on spending as much time with me as he could, because in a few months, he would still have to go back to his girlfriend and wrap everything up in Chicago before moving back here permanently. He appeared quite pleased about finally having a brother, so he was just wanting to get to know me, and instead of appreciating that, I urged him to back down. I thought my uncle was being unjust, so I informed him that all I wanted was space and respect for my boundaries. That was it. I was still open to a relationship with him, but not one that moved so quickly. I attempted to explain it to my uncle, but he just claimed that I owed Alex an apology since he was devastated by what I had said and felt like he had pushed his companionship on me when I did not want it. Here's the thing. I can see why Alex wouldn't understand why I said what I said, given how little time he's known me. But my uncle has known me my entire life, so I felt he should understand where I'm coming from. Everyone who knows me knows that I am an introvert who dislikes spending time with other people. I would much prefer to be alone, and it has nothing to do with being superior. I simply enjoy spending time alone and occasionally with my friends. I am not in a position to call him a friend since, while he has been courteous to me whenever he comes over, he only speaks about himself and his life, which gets dull after a while because I don't even get to talk. I'm not sure how he expects to get to know me better if he does all the chatting, but it isn't the point right now. I am an introvert and am currently in my late 20s. I just need some peace and quiet, and I expect my uncle to understand that. Instead, we ended up fighting over the phone because he had assumed an accusatory tone with me and was behaving as if I were attempting to intentionally injure Alex. He expected me to apologize for what I said, but I explained that I was not apologizing for having boundaries. So he told me that since I was determined to be on my own, he believed it would be better if he cut me off as well because he did not want to disturb me too much. I thought it was incredibly insulting since he was threatening to cut me off if I didn't play nice with Alex, despite the fact that he was getting on my nerves. But now that I've thought about it, I'm not sure what to believe anymore. At the end of the day, Alex was only trying to be nice to me, and I was the one who slammed the door shut. After my confrontation with my uncle, I felt even more like a jerk for what I did. I don't know what to feel anymore. Yet I also believe that somewhere my acts are right. I don't want to discuss this with any of my friends right now because I need an unbiased and objective view, which is why I'm on Reddit, I think. So AITA for telling my half-brother to back off and explaining that I need my space and cannot spend time with him every day. Update 1. After reading the comments, I decided that what I did was correct. I need space and time to comprehend what I've learned. I can't do that if he keeps coming up at my door every day, so I'm sticking with my decision. I told my uncle that I was not going to talk to Alex or apologize to him. I have nothing to apologize for in the first place. As previously said, I was rather friendly to Alex. Anyway, it's been a few days, And Alex hasn't shown up at my place since I told him to go, and he hasn't spoken to me since my last conversation with my uncle. I imagine he won't talk to me until I apologize to Alex, which I won't do. We're at a dead end right now. I was fairly certain that when I returned home from work last evening, I spotted my uncle leaving Alex's home. He lives just a few homes away. We can mainly just stroll to each other's houses, and I'm very sure that as I entered my house, I noticed him through my window and realized that he was probably there to see Alex rather than me. I feel awful that this is occurring because I am really close to my uncle. My father passed away recently. I can't cope with the fact that he's attempting to ignore me right now, but I was the one who stated I needed some peace, quiet, and alone time. So I guess I can't make him talk to me. I guess it just sucked that I expected him to understand where I was coming from, because he's known me since I was a toddler. But now it appears that he is rather certain about whose side he is on, despite the fact that he was under no obligation to do so. He might have simply respected my opinion and left things alone. I don't mean to sound whining, but I believe Alex had no right to complain to my uncle about this, because I had been as friendly to him as possible. However, according to my uncle, Alex made it sound like I was quite brusque and rude with him. Anyway, I can't force people to understand me or accept my beliefs, so if they want to make me the villain simply because I have boundaries, they can. At the very least, I now have my own place, and I can come home and rest on my own, rather than having to entertain guests as soon as I wake up and return from work. At the very least, this has resulted in one positive outcome. Update 2. My last post was 2 weeks ago. Since then, not much has transpired. Alex had ceased paying me visits, and a few days ago, I observed him getting into a cab with some of his belongings. It was the weekend, and I was taking a walk about the neighbourhood, as I generally do on weekends in the morning. I couldn't help but ask him where he was going, and he said he was going to the airport because he was going back to Chicago for a few days to finish things up before returning here with his girlfriend. He spoke to me in a very different tone than before, and I tried not to feel odd about it, but I did. He was quite short with me, which surprised me, but I realised that he didn't like the idea that I tried to draw a line, and while he didn't enjoy it. That was his decision to make. I can't really judge him for that. If he no longer likes me and believes I'm the evil guy for saying what I did, I can't help it. I haven't been able to communicate with my uncle since our previous phone chat, since I haven't apologised to Alex. But now I feel like I did the right thing because my uncle came up to my apartment this morning. I assumed he was coming to finally sort things out, which made me joyful, but then he said he was here to talk to me about my behaviour. I was perplexed by what he meant until he explained that he had been thinking about it and believed that I needed a therapist so that I could process my emotions and let them out in a healthy way rather than isolating myself from those who care about me. That was an odd thing to say because I hadn't alienated myself from anyone. All I had done was tell Alex that I didn't want to see him every day, but I was still willing to talk to my uncle and stay in touch with him. He was the one who was shutting me out. I don't think I'm isolating myself at all. I spend my lunch break with my co-workers and on occasion with my friends, and this has been the case for years. I really don't enjoy coming out of the house to socialise with others or having people over every day. That seems pretty normal to me, and I don't think I need to see a therapist about it. I was irritated when he said that, and I informed him that I was completely healthy and normal, so he didn't have to send me to a therapist. Besides, if I had to, I'd probably go because I wanted to deal with my father's death, not because he thought I was weird, because I didn't want to hang out with my brother, whom I didn't even know existed until a couple of weeks ago. And then my uncle remarked that he was convinced that speaking with a mental health specialist would do me a world of good, since the way I was acting was simply not right, and he was concerned about me. So I asked him why. If he was so concerned about me, he hadn't spoken to me in days, and he told me that he had wanted me to contact him and apologise to Alex, as he had told me earlier. But because I was too stubborn to do any of that, he had to come and talk to me himself, and he had concluded that after my father had died, I had most likely begun to see Alex as the villain. It was silly because I had no negative feelings towards Alex. All I needed was some space from him, and no matter how hard I tried to explain it to him, he just didn't understand. Furthermore, he began to express his concern for me, claiming that if I continued to act this way, I would end up with no one. I finally snapped and informed him that I had no one left in my family to rely on now that both of my parents had passed away, and he too recognized that I needed help but was unwilling to talk to me. So I wasn't worried about being alone anymore. Then I told him I needed to leave for work, and I was running late, so he went, and that was all. I had a long day at work as well, because I was in such a bad mood. My uncle and Alex both seemed to be going too far in attempting to make me feel bad for no apparent reason. Today, I was so annoyed that I eventually told a handful of my friends about what had happened. After listening to me, the majority of them concluded that I had done nothing wrong. I was polite to everyone, but I made it plain that I needed some space. There is nothing wrong with it, and anyone who is upset by it does not deserve a place in my life. And if my uncle believes that anything is wrong with me mentally, he can continue to portray me as a terrible guy. I don't care anymore since I'm over dealing with such immature and strange people. Update 3. 3 days have passed since my previous update, and a lot has transpired since then. As I previously stated, my uncle wanted me to see a therapist so that I could sort through my emotions, despite the fact that I was quite clear about what I wanted. Anyway, he didn't say anything to me that day, but the next day he texted me again and sent me a list of therapists in my area, as well as ones who could conduct treatment sessions online. The idea that there was something wrong with me for not wanting to entertain Alex every day irritated me, so I did not block him, but I did silence all of his alerts, and I have not talked to him since. And given what I've just learned, I doubt I will. Yesterday, when I was at work, my father's lawyer called and said he needed to talk to me about something. So we got on the phone a few minutes later, and he told me that my father's affair partner from earlier had stated she wanted to speak with me. Initially, he informed me that Alex's father had no desire to speak with me, but Alex wanted to establish a relationship with us. So his unexpected change of heart surprised me. I assumed it had to do with my behavior with Alex, and that he would berate me in the same way as my uncle had, and I didn't need any more of that. So my first thought was to say no, since I did not want any more turmoil. But then my father's lawyer said that he thought I should speak with him, because when he called him, he said it was really urgent, and he needed to address it with me immediately. That got me thinking, and I told him to give him my phone number so he could contact me. Half an hour later, he called me and, after introducing himself, got right to the point. He told me that he and his son had always known about me, and he was sorry for my father's death, but he had recently learned from Alex that I had assumed my uncle was unaware of the affair until lately, and I felt he had discovered it at the same time as I did. He wanted me to know that my uncle was aware of everything, and had played an active role in their lives thus far. He told me that my uncle had been lying to me about everything, and when he discovered this, he felt he couldn't keep quiet about it since he thought it was wrong on multiple levels. When he told me all of this, I felt horribly betrayed, because my uncle knew I had a brother, but never told me anything. On top of that, I have to give him credit. He was a fantastic actor, because he didn't even hint that he had known Alex for as long as he had known me. Alex had also lied to me about everything, but I was less affected by it than I was by my uncle lying to me, because I had only known him for a short time. I thanked Alex's father for telling me the truth, and then hung up. After that, I was determined never to speak to my uncle or Alex again, because they both knew the truth while I had been kept in the dark. I believe that if anyone needs treatment, it is the two of them, not me. It is clear that the two of them are a team, and everything makes sense now. So while I haven't blocked any of them, I will make sure I don't have to speak with them again. I'm still trying to digest everything and come to terms with it. I guess I was right when I claimed I don't have anyone in my family I can rely on. It's terrible that everyone I've known has been lying to me for so long, and I wouldn't be surprised if I discovered that my father was also aware of the affair. Anyway, for anyone who wants a recap of what I've said, it boils down to the fact that I come from a family of liars, and know I can never trust anyone again. Update 4. Hello, it's been a few months since my last update. I've had no contact with my uncle or Alex. He lives next door with his girlfriend, but we don't even say hello, which is fine with me. In fact, I pray for it since they are all liars, and I do not want to see them, but, unfortunately, he has already rented the house, and I have no say in it. My uncle pays frequent visits to Alex, and he hasn't contacted me since I cut him off a few months ago after discovering the truth about him. Initially, I felt terrible about it since I felt as if I had no family left, but after a while, I accepted it. I understand that having no family would be preferable to having a family that lies to you and never respects you. At least I have my friends with me, and I know they will always be there for me. So far, these are the only ones I've been able to trust. My life is really going well right now, and I'm okay with everything that has transpired. I'm willing to leave the past behind and move forward.